are they terrorists or militants? Or are they innocents you have captured and shooting them? This is actually a crime against humanity. You can't do this. Even if you capture a war criminal. This is just not allowed, but they did it, and here is the evidence. Sorry, it got stuck. Oops. Basically, there was a picture there which was showing that there were. Okay. There's a picture there where you can see there are men and women in the Darbar Sahib complex. Really, can you move your hand? Thanks. And their hands are tied to their turbans and they're being killed. So I'm trying to get the picture. Technical difficulties. Sorry. This is the one. I mean, it's not very clear because you have to understand most of these things were either smuggled out or they were stolen from the army records. And this picture was actually by one of the journalists in Punjab who was still surviving. That's where I bought it from. So a lot of this stuff is still available. It's a matter of hunting it down. Again, what's the objective? The objective is to show that all this propaganda and the meshed lies which government has been disseminating for the last 23 years, we have to counter it. And you can't just counter it with rhetoric and emotions. You have to counter it with solid evidence. And this is the kind of stuff I've taken to State Department, US State Department, to talk to them about how they cannot include Sikhs in the events of 1984 as being terrorist events. Because they were including these as terrorist events, and we fought with them, and since then they have removed this. Now, GKC Reddy, he's written a book, and in there he makes this statement. And look at this. Again, none of these are Sikh guys. I'm not using any Sikh references here. So nobody can tell me that I'm creating a Sikh propaganda here. He says Operation Bluestar will go down in history as one of the biggest massacre of unarmed civilians. This is the operative word here. Unarmed civilians by the organized military force of a nation. So when you have a military in a nation, their purpose is to go fight the other nations to protect their citizens. Here, the army was used to kill its own citizens who were unarmed. And the word unarmed is used deliberately, as the disparity in arms on the two sides was so great that those resisting army invasion of the temple could hardly be termed armed. So this is where I want to talk about from a Sikh angle of it. So if there were a few people, 30, 40, 50, some people say up to 150, even if they stayed back to protect the honor and the desecration of Darbar Sahib, they fought with what we will call homemade weapons, or very sort of remedial level of weaponry. So they fought with courage and bravery to protect the honor of the Darbar Sahib complex, and independent sources say that's true. So if there were a few people, they really didn't have much arms. So what this shows is that the government is going there with that much preparation. Again, their purpose is to destroy and kill as much. This was the target of the operation. This picture basically shows that several people are killed and they're lined up in, not in the Prakarma, but there are basically rooms where you can go stay, and there's this sort of a gallery way to get to the rooms. And they were dragged around. So the treatment of the dead bodies was incredibly bad. So, I mean, there are war conventions too. You know, if you kill somebody, they're supposed to be a proper burial, you were supposed to treat them with respect, but they were just dragged around. And you can look in here as well. You look at the soldier in the back, he's dragging another body. Right there in the back. And then other bodies are just, you can see the marks, skid marks of bodies being dragged. Okay, so let's get into another issue. And this is from Cynthia. Cynthia is a anthropologist at Notre Dame. She actually heads the Kroc Institute for Conflict Studies. And this is her statement. 70,000 troops in conjunction with the use of tanks and chemical gas killed hundreds, possibly thousands of innocent pilgrims. So her estimate, with all her reporting, is 70,000 soldiers were used. Chemical gas was used. Sikh reference library was burned down. And at least 37 other places of worship, which means gurdwaras, were attacked simultaneously. So again, if the government really believed that they're going there to capture people, why are they attacking other major gurdwaras at the same time? Throughout Punjab. So obviously the agenda wasn't to capture anyone, it's to go have as much destruction as possible. Okay. Now, you saw the word chemical gas was used, and some people will say, how is that possible? India is a signatory to those conventions which do not allow to use chemical gas. Well, you had soldiers standing there in the Darwaza complex with the chemical gas masks. So obviously they were using it. So the point is, forget about, the kind of things we are fighting in our community about to establish what really happened. I mean, even if Sikhs fought with their complete, weaponry, even then this is not allowed. We have to come out of our apologetic state of mind. This is where we are caught up. We are always apologizing for who we are. We need to be going and aggressive and telling them what really happened. And even if we were armed, even if there were 100,000 people sitting there fighting with the Indian army, even then this is not allowed. India as a nation state has agreed that they don't do this, but they actually go out and do this. Okay. And after this, Joyce, I have already mentioned her name from University of Belfast. She said that this after the Darwaza complex massacre, this became a routine where illegal detentions, disappearances, fake encounters became a routine in Punjab. I'll get into that a little bit later, but this is the major part which I want to talk about. Subramaniam Swamy, at some point he was an MP as well, he wrote a book called Creating a Martyr, and he basically is saying disinformation campaign was started by government of India. And look at what he writes. He said they masterminded disinformation campaign to create legitimacy for its actions. Its goal was, these are direct quotes, to make out that the Golden Temple was the haven of criminals, a store of armory, and a citadel of nations' dismemberment conspiracy. So Subramaniam Swamy is saying that government actually fabricated these ideas, and they are very successful at it. You visit an average household, Sikh household, this is exactly what they'll tell you. So it's really funny. Somebody invents the history for you. This is called revisionism. And they come tell you this is what happened, and you on some sort of faith or belief because it's a government statement, because they have a platform to fabricate these lies, we start believing it. And people who are studying these things, they are saying this was completely fabricated. Government actually, I don't have a written reference, but I can only mention this. Indian government in 1985 hired an ad agency. Its name was V-Diffusion, which now runs a Rediff Mail in India. And they were given 2 crore rupees to come up with an ad campaign in a passive way to destroy the image of the Sikhs. This is when ads started appearing in Indian newspaper, English dailies, New Delhi's English daily newspapers, where they'll have an ad where a Sikh taxi driver is driving a taxi, and the quote at the bottom will say, "Do you trust this man?" I mean, this is very sophisticated stuff. Again, it's not just the Indian government who does this. All governments do this kind of propaganda. If you want to learn more about these kind of things, you can go read Noam Chomsky's book, The Public Mind and the Propaganda War. Most of the wars are fought on propagandas. And as a community who was a victim of this kind of stuff, at least we need to be vigilant about this propaganda. Forget about convincing other people, you have to convince yourself first and your community. Okay, I want to talk about Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale as well. I mentioned Jathedar because he's the Jathedar of Damdami Taksal. There are, various reasons why we should not call Sant or Baba, but that's fine if people want to call him. But he was a Jathedar of Damdami Taksal. And next few slides, I'm going to focus on these kind of things, what the government said and what the reality is. So here is what the government said. Arun Shourie wrote this in Indian Express. Arun Shourie is a celebrated hero of India in terms of media. He's a BJP spokesperson these days. In those days he read, this is before 84. For all I know, Bhindranwale is completely innocent and is genuinely and exclusively dedicated to the teachings of the Guru. This is one of the most celebrated Indian media celebrity who became a minister in the BJP government as well. So he's saying that actually there's nothing wrong he's doing. He's just doing what Sikhs are supposed to do. He's furthering the Guru's mission. Okay? This was, you might say, a cynics among you or a skeptics among you might say, well, this was before 84. What about after 84? Let's look at another celebrated media guy there. Veer Sanghvi. He still writes for Hindustan Times. In fact, he writes mostly against him. But this was a statement in 86. He says, whatever Bhindranwale's involvement, the government had no concrete evidence and the ministry thought it inadvisable to arrest him on a flimsy case only to have him acquitted and transformed into a hero. So basically government discussed the whole option and they found that there was nothing they could do because he's not doing anything illegal. And they told him don't go arrest him because he'll become even a more popular figure. So the point is, people who are privy to this kind of information knew there was nothing illegal Baba Jataya Sikh Pinram, all of us.